Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this fantastically curated movie masters panel, as it were. Panel being obviously a male panel of some of the greatest filmmakers in this city and certainly in this country. We'll address the panel bit at some point in the discussion for sure. But these are gentlemen responsible for at least 100+ hours of great entertainment that you've been, been a consumer of, and I think you could do a better job with giving them a huge round of applause before we start. We're waiting for Mr. Andhare. Of course, Virkamaditya Motwani was supposed to be here. He is probably not showing up. He's got COVID, right? Wow. Yeah, sure. And of course, of the 100+ hours of entertainment that you've consumed of these amazing directors, another one is coming up for 2.5 hours, I'm presuming. Sudhir Mishra, you have a release this Friday. That's Afwa, right?
All of us have something coming up.
Yeah, I mean, Hansal probably has some 100 hours coming up in the next 2 years or working on 200 of them already, right? Sriram has a film. Of course, Chaubey, you have a series. Quite obviously, the most obvious point that I want to start this discussion with is the fact that what unites all of you is that you guys have been in the films for at least 25+ years, doing something or the other, whether you started out as an assistant at the time.
Abhishek is the younger one.
Huh? Well, relatively speaking. But you know, what's most important here is, especially for something like a FICCI Frames that's also been around for 20+ years, is how much do you think that world that you've been part of as a professional, as someone in the films, how much of it has changed from the time that you started to how you are right now? How has it affected your lives as filmmakers? How do you even see the journey of yourself as against the journey of what you were part of over years? I'm going to start with you, Abhishek. Well, you're right next to me.
Well, I think you should begin because, all of you have much more skin in the game and years in the game than I do. But I can just start by saying that...
People are bored, they've listened to us.
Yeah, it's been 23 years since I've been working in the industry and everything has changed in most regards. But in the most important regards, nothing has changed. It's still the same. What I do as a filmmaker, I was still doing 15 years ago, and I'm still doing the same. But yeah, the world has changed around us, and we have to take cognizance of the fact that things are changing, the audiences are changing, the mediums that they are interacting with us are changing. So it's just about being alert and taking note of what's going on. But the basic fact, we sit in the room, we write our scripts, then we go on set and shoot our films. Those things haven't changed, thankfully.
Right. I mean, of course, coming to you, Sudhir, you've seen the maximum number of changes in terms of medium, as it were, over years. I mean, you've seen, there was this time when there was what is called the art house movement. Then you saw what became, television became huge at a certain point in time. Then VHS, we had theaters that came back. And then, of course, multiplexes came, and now we're obviously in this situation where OTT is a very important medium too, and which is something that we'll look into after, because all of you, in some form or the other, are also interacting with OTT as a medium. What's the biggest change that you think has happened over years as for you to respond to as a filmmaker? I mean here purely as a medium.
Yeah, I mean, purely as a medium, like Abhishek said, I mean, if I look back and I say in 1982, there's a kid called Sudhir Mishra came into town, and when I look back at that guy, I feel petrified for him, because why the hell did he come? There was nothing. You didn't want to make. I mean, me being an example of a lot of people. There wasn't any. We didn't want to do popular cinema.
Right.
There was no television in 1982. We didn't want to do advertising. So what the hell did we want to do? There was this films, and we thought we will change the world with these 5 films or 6 films that we might make, or whatever, I don't know. So in that sense, I mean, but that as a training ground, I mean, the guys who came in that time had left everything, And so, I mean...
There was no plan B, really.
There was no plan B, and therefore that you know, there's a letter the Scorsese wrote to his daughter, where you know, when you go through those series of rejections, when you go through those failures, maybe those failures are good for you. At that time, they look bad. But maybe, you know, all those guys who rejected you did you a favor because you then rewrote something, did something again, didn't make a bad one maybe. So that change is now it's easy, you know, now it's a profession. Now,
You're saying when you joined, there was not even a profession.
No,
Right.
nothing. And even the popular film guys were selling their coats and everything else, and dhoti rota chapati and signing undis. And there's a statistic that since films began, 90% of producers have lost their shirts. The government has made money on each film, right? Tax.
Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, you know, it was really tough. And today, there is an advantage. I mean, in the sense, things are easy. There are stories, you know. But making some, like Abhishek says, I mean, it's still the same. You know, you sit in front of a blank page and you think this time you're going to get exposed. Abhi jo mera fraud hai, pakda jayega. Abhi tak kaise main bach gaya. You know, so you said you're really vulnerable. If you are a filmmaker,
Right.
I mean, there are, not everybody who claims to make films is a filmmaker. But if you're a filmmaker, yeah. But, you know, if you're a filmmaker, you're nervous, right? And you sit and you've done things before, so there is this whole, you know, need to evolve. But, you know, evolving means stepping out of comfort zones and you know, so this, every time it's like a first film if you're a filmmaker.
Right.
Right? Every time there's a scare, right? So that's still the same. But, you know, you can, I've never had so much work in my life.
There you go. Yeah.
You know, so I mean, a film like Serious Men, because it was on Netflix, was, I mean, I couldn't imagine it getting made, you know, this complicated story of a man scamming on behalf of his son, you know, a scientist scamming on whatever, and this interaction, you know, father and son, half in English, half this, half that, you know. I don't think outside of Netflix it would have been, I mean, you could have funded it,
Right.
like Hazaro I got funded, you know. But those days funding was luck. I got into a plane and you know, somebody had rejected my film and Pritish Nandi was sitting next to me. And he said, why are you so depressed? I said, my funding just ran out, you know. He said, how much do you need? I said, this much. He said, come tomorrow, I'll give it to you. So sometimes it was that easy, you know. But it was luck, you know. I mean, 5 years I didn't get a film. So, I mean, today kids are much better, you know.
Right.
But
So if you look at your career trajectory over years, clearly you are perhaps at the best time of your life in terms of avenues in which you can sort of
I
operate
don't
in.
know.
You don't know, but
I don't
it's
know.
only better than when
I
you
think
started.
sometimes, again, see,
Yeah.
it took me 5 years to make Hazaron.
Yeah.
So 5 years in which I was rejected many times. Did those 5 years, because of that, was Hazaro a better film? I don't know. Today you could make Hazaro in a year, write it quickly.
Right.
So I think for me, I mean, these are questions. Again, sometimes, you know, a lot of films didn't get made. So, I mean, in that sense, this is a great time, you know.
Would you agree, Hansal, in terms of it being a better time for you personally as a filmmaker from when you started out to where you are right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting paid to make films, paid to tell stories. That did not happen for many years.
What do you mean? You were doing it for free? Like what?
I was desperate.
Okay.
So I was literally living off my parents. Living off my parents because I was lucky enough to be born and brought up in Bombay. So I did not have to pay rent. But I was struggling. I mean, I made films. I made all kinds of films trying to make my mark. And realized that I had lost myself in the... So what has changed for me on a personal level is that I've begun to find myself through the stories that I try to tell, you know, in the last 13 years. So it's been sort of a awakening in that sense. And when that awakening began, I realized also that we were in a more organized place. That, you know, gradually, whatever you make finds its audience. You know, we, you know, unlike the thinking that has plagued our business, and that is sort of destroying the stories that we are trying to tell. This very narrow Friday, Saturday, Sunday game.
The box office game you're talking
Yeah,
about.
the box office game. There is a story and a film travels far beyond that. And you're seeing that. You're seeing that happening. The avenues for having your film seen, your stories seen by the world are many more. Like I tried to, I had the book by Sucheta Dalal and Debashish Basu way back in 2005.
Okay.
I tried to pitch it as a film. And they said, nahi, bahut boring hai, it's very dry. And in 2017, Sameer Nair meets me and gives me the same book, says, do you want to make this into a show? And, the rest is history. It became so hugely successful. What was perceived as a dry story, we took a chance on it and it became immensely successful. So it gave me the power to tell more stories like this, that nobody would turn back and say, oh, this is a very dry story. Now, those stories are not conceived, are not seen as dry. And I am in a more organized space. Things are far more organized today. Things are far more professional today. When I started, it was very informal. Like my first film was made on a whim. So Vishal had just done music for a film called Vishal Bhardwaj, for a film called Machis. And the producer, Vishal, had introduced me to make trailers for that film. So I was making trailers, and the producer was very frustrated about some other film he had made.
Which film was this?
My first film?
No, the music.
Machis.
Okay, Machis you're talking about.
Machis. That was Vishal's first film.
As a composer.
His breakout film, I would say.
Right.
As a composer. He had done another film earlier, many years earlier. So the producer was very happy with me delivering trailer after trailer, and he was frustrated with some other film that I won't name the filmmaker and the film, but he was very frustrated with that film with the budget. So it was like a challenge he threw at me. He said, so how much can you make a film in? I was also desperate, and I just threw a number. I said 50 lakhs. So he said, okay. He shouted. That producer did not have intercoms, anything in his office. So he would just scream to people. So he screamed to one guy, Hemant, give him 50 lakhs. And I thought this was a joke. Some joke was unfolding before me. That guy came with a check, which he signed, and he gave me the money. He said, okay, make your film. So I actually, after I took that check.
Who was this producer? You might want to give their number.
No, he's. I don't think he's making films anymore. Thanks to such decisions, he's not making any more films. But R.V. Pandit, he was R.V. Pandit. But
no more actually. He's no more. Yeah.
Really? Oh.
He's no more. He passed away. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so,
he was a governor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So Mr. Pandit just gave us the money, and after I got the money, I did not know what to do with it. I said, what to do? I have to make a film now. So I found Anurag Kashyap in Manoj Bajpayee's house. I did not know him. Manoj said, writer hai. I said, yaar, I need to make a film. Jaldi kuch bata de. So we actually wrote something and started a film in 3 weeks.
Wow.
So
it was that haphazard is basically what you're saying.
That's how I began. And I'm still living that accident.
Right, Sriram, in your case, of course, you went to FTI, you studied film, you're studying a world of cinema which has existed across the world, and then you step into this particular world, which obviously doesn't value whatever certificate you showed up with, right? A lot of people might say it took you a while to make your first film in terms of a theatrical release, and now everyone wants you to make a film every year, but again, you're taking your own sweet time. How has that world changed from when you stepped out of college to where you are now?
See, when I came out of college, actually, I had no idea I wanted to make films. I actually got a job as a film journalist.
Okay.
And I realized I was not very good at it. I was working for Stardust.
No way.
And I was chucked out in a few months. And but I had met a lot of other journalists, and I worked for Trade Guide for about a year and a half. And that's when, I used to love films right from since I was a kid. So I loved the industry, and I had no idea what filmmaking was all about, So when I met Mukul Anand once for an interview, and he told me, I told him actually, okay, I want to be on that side, doing what you all do. He said, come and join me, I won't pay you. And I said, great. And I had my own house, luckily. So that was the main chaos in Bombay. If you have a house, you're actually half, you're blessed. And my grandmother's house. So I worked with him. He started paying me after a month. And then during the course of that film, that was a film called Aetbar, which was a remake of Dial M for Murder. And in the course of that film, I applied to the institute as a lark, because then he told me actually, he was quite a visionary, and he told me it's all going to change. It's going to mean satellite and television is going to take over and all that. So he said, you join. He encouraged me to join. I don't know whether he wanted to say, okay, this assistant is too bad, so isko bhagao, It might be that also. But anyway, I joined the institute, and then also it took us some time to find our feet, We did have stories, but maybe they were not good stories. Maybe we didn't sell them hard enough. But I won't say I struggled. I was managing till I had made one film on film on video on Raman Raghav, which Ram Gopal Verma saw thanks to Anurag Kashyap. He called me, and then after that, I don't know. I've been on the other side. There'll be more offers for me than I'm making.
Right.
So I have no complaints. And for me, what has not changed, luckily, is you sit in a hall watching a good film with a crowd, and that thrill is the same, so that's the main thing. So I'm good.
I have to say what has definitely changed in terms of conversations that take place in forums like these is, and which is what a lot of artists tend to be extremely antsy about the world they're in. I actually hear a lot more positive stories now and how the world is much better. Do you think OTT has a lot to do with it? That's a whole new industry that came into this town or in this country for sure, 2016 onwards. Your last film you spoke about Serious Men that went straight to Netflix. You spoke about Scam that, sort of almost built Sony Live from scratch in a certain way. Of course, you're still in the theater and you love the movies. Your next one is a series, again, which is for Netflix, if I'm not mistaken. Has that made a big difference in the sense of that burden of the box office and, which was always, in conflict with art as self-expression? Has that sort of mediated itself very well when it comes to a platform like OTT?
Well, certainly, in a few ways, because this Friday, Saturday, Sunday, this pressure that filmmakers have, that's really gone out of the window when you're releasing something on OTT. Yes, they have numbers and they have all these figures. Luckily, they don't come to us. So we are primarily engaged with the audience response via social media or the people that we meet. And we kind of guess what the feedback has been like. So definitely, and there is much more openness as far as the kind of content you can make on these platforms as compared to movies. Movies always, even back then when we all started, there was always a pressure of box office success. But over the years, it has gotten even worse.
Okay.
And this obsession with weekend numbers,
right.
It's an unnatural kind of an obsession which actually drives, makes our cinema much worse than it should be. I think if we stop obsessing over these box office numbers also, I think the hit-flop ratio is not going to change radically. So I think this OTT revolution that has happened in good time for filmmakers like us. Not only in terms of the 2-hour format, we are also now doing series which are like, I've just done Soup for Netflix, which is like a 7-hour story. And it really opened me up as a filmmaker because now I have 7 hours to tell a story and it's a limited series. So my story ends, I don't have to worry about season 2. So it just opened me creatively how to structure a story which is 7 hours long, how to write it. So, this is a good time in that sense.
Right.
And I also, a couple of years ago, made 2 short films, and I had never made a short film. It's something that you do when you start out as a filmmaker, but I didn't do it. So, now, in the last 4 years, I've made a feature film, 2 short films, and now a 7-hour story. This could not have been possible.
And got paid for it.
And got paid for it, that's true, yes. And got paid for it. This was not possible without the platform.
So, would you think that this, which is very different from television, because it's still short format, television can go to 150 episodes, 300 episodes, can have leaps, all kinds of things happening. And that's where everyone gets obsessed with it. They can't have careers outside a particular show. Do you think this is far more a director's medium, OTT as we know it, even more than theaters, because theaters have become so much more about which movie star is on the poster, but here it doesn't matter. If it's on Netflix, I'll be able to click it on that day and decide it or love it or hate it for what it is.
Yeah, in the sense that it's gone back. In the old days, Rajshri used to release a film at 11 o'clock, one show, and then wait for it to build. Right? And then, like a film like Jeevan Mrityu, which most people wouldn't have heard about, but you know.
They can Google, it's
big,
okay,
big,
yeah.
Big hit. You know, I mean, you know, it evolves in a sense, the audience love, and then there used to be re-releases. In that sense, we are back in
Some form.
some form to that, where, like Hansal says, you don't have to worry about it. People can discover your film. You know, you're not immediately bound by a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You're not, and an audience is also not compelled. I mean, they can, you know, watch it in their own time and whatever. So I think in that sense there is a lot of good things happening in those terms. Cinema is a medium that, like Abhishek says, you know, today what you can do is you can do whatever. I mean, if the story or whatever you want to do, you can write a novel.
Right.
You can, you know, and so that's a series, let's say. Or you
a
can
short
write a
film,
short
right.
story, you know, like a very short story, and that's a short film, which I've also done with Tapsi and Hansal and Anubhav, and I have done a kind of anthology, which, you know. So that all these formats are available to us. So I mean, so I think it's a time where you know, I mean, if you are not too much in a hurry, then you can find yourself in very interesting ways. And after all, OTT is a kind of a delivery system, right? So I mean, I think personally, if we evolve and tell stories and not, you know, Western formats, and if we tell stories from around us, and if more and more people, I think what's very interesting that has happened in cinema over the last 10, 15 years is there are a lot of small town boys have come in and made films, right? So if you see here one, you see Nagpur, Raju Hirani, you see Jamshedpur, Imtiaz Ali, you know, you see
That's
Anurag
what you also,
Kashyap, you know, Gorakhpur, you know. So, I mean, a lot of stories. So, I mean, these kind of stories would not be told Allahabad, Tigmanshu Dhulia. I mean, this is also not a kind of Bombay, right? I mean, this is, you know, it's not that cool.
No. These guys are paid. They didn't have to pay rent. I mean, sorry.
No, they didn't have to pay rent. No, but they can tell. Like an Ashutosh Govarikar is very different from a Dadar boy. He's also local. I mean, this whole this kind of small town snobbery is also not, you know, something that I'm in. But so all sorts of stories. If OTT has a possibility, and the stories that sometimes people are asked to make, and the facts on the ground, like Panchayat is a very successful show. Now it's very local, right? Not the kind of formula that anyone talks about. So I mean, I think if it evolves like that, it's a very interesting time to be in.
But there is that thing about the magic of cinema, right? And the magic of cinema means that there is a big hall, it's a dark hall, everyone sits together, collectively experiences something together. That is movies, isn't it?
There's no replacement for that.
Right. So do you think there is an element of that which is really what movies are? And this is, you know, good quality, but it's really TV. It's great quality television, but it's TV after all. I'm talking about you as filmmakers in terms of an aspiration that you would have about seeing your own work.
But for independent cinema like Scorsese, most of our films were seen on DVD anyway.
Regardless, right.
Or on piracy, right? So, I mean, this is a much better format.
Right.
Right? People can discover, right? So you are allowed to make a film on Netflix as you would have made. It's almost like future-proof. Right? You are allowed to make that film. But then, you know, I mean, there's a practicality of it all, no?
Right.
And it's allowed.
Do you think, Hansal, that's something that you, I mean, while it takes you away from the burden of the box office, but really the real game, the real thing, is the freaking big screen?
I don't know. I've always made movies, or I've told stories to tell my next story.
Okay.
You know, it's always been that. You know, for me, it's been a process of constantly facilitating the next. You know, so the day I finish, I deliver something, I want to move on to my next thing. And if this, you know, whatever medium facilitates that, you know, Scam facilitated that. You know, I'm able to tell a story like I'm doing a show called Scoop for Netflix. Now, that story was facilitated because Scam was a huge success.
Right.
I could tell this unique story.
So the medium doesn't
tell it
matter to you?
For me, the medium doesn't matter. For me, the long form actually has been very exciting. I enjoy the long form Uh, Perhaps as much, sometimes more than the feature film format, because I'm getting to explore characters, take a character and sort of live with that character for much longer and delve into things that, sometimes for the sake of brevity, I might need to cut out, that you...
Sure.
So everything is a joy. I mean, I had made, for us, for example, I made it for...
A theatrical release.
For a theatrical release, and I enjoyed watching it there. The problem was that I watched it with my family. Nobody
What's
else
the problem with watching it with your family?
Nobody else was
with
there.
only your family,
Only
okay.
me and my family. Me, my family, and some well-wishers. So one day, they, somebody messaged me, said, Inox is full. And I rushed there. And it was the cast, crew, and their families. So, but the film found its audience on OTT.
Right.
People enjoyed the film. They wrote to me. The film was ranked. It was #1 on Netflix for 2 weeks, and it was more than what we expected after what happened at the theaters. But yes, I do miss. I mean, seeing it alone in that dark room on the big screen. There's a joy. There's amazement. But I don't like seeing my own work there.
Look, Sriram, I don't know. I get a sense that you would be a far bigger purist when it comes to the big screen.
Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, please prove me right. Like, is that something that sort of draws you far more into this world than just doesn't matter, the medium doesn't matter, the story does?
No, for me, it's not that I have anything against any other format. It's just that because I love movies the most, and I'm getting a chance to still make movies, and therefore the big screen. So even when you're choosing a story or choosing the sort of the talent to go with it, you try to look for, okay, is this something I will go and see in a hall? That's the only question I have to answer.
Right.
Will I pay for it? And if I pay for it, is it going to be something worth the time and the money and everything? So yeah, and there is a big thrill of that, which, I mean, a lot of people sometimes, my thing with OTTs, I mean, even this Monica, oh my darling, has done very well. And I don't think it would have done so well in the hall simply because it would have been edited so much. So the language and all that fun probably was what made it work on Netflix. But for me, I hate it when someone says, I saw this film.
That was a film you were working on, right? That was something...
I was supposed to make it, then I sort of didn't do it. So I was supposed to do it, but I didn't do it. But I mean, luckily I didn't do it, and Vasan, I think, did it much, much better. But what I'm saying is, for me, I would still go for the hall, and for me, like standing
So
in
basically, that's a film
the
that
aisle and watching the audience when they are reacting to your film is
Right.
a huge thrill,
Right.
which is worth it. So.
Which you can't do when you're just watching it with your family.
Yeah. And the hardest thing is sometimes when you hear about some films, which are like, oh, I saw it. No, you saw it at one go. No, seven, whatever installments. I mean, what a way to that's a film. I mean, so I think if I'm making something for OTT, I'll still try to make a film and hope that how we used to watch when DVDs and VHS were there. We used to darken the room, put that time there were no phones to put on silent, but watch it like a movie in the house,
Right. That brings us to Mr. Ajit Andhare, CEO Viacom. He joins us. Please give him a big hand. We're in the middle of a discussion, Ajit, on this whole revolution, as it were, as we choose to call it, which is OTT, of course, and how that's kind of split the whole cinema world into multiple halves, not even just one. The fact that Abhishek can make a short film, can make a series, can make a film, but eventually the movie industry that we've always known it has been the theatrical world, right? Which is where, people come out of their homes, make that much effort, drive all the way down, pay a ticket. Do you think that has changed so far as, your work is concerned, where you actually see something as an OTT film and then you see something else as a theatrical release, where you'll pump in that kind of money, hoping that people show up? Can we have a mic for him, please? We'll need an extra mic. No, we'll need one anyway. Oh, okay. Yeah.
First of all, apologies for this kind of, late entry, and that too in such an esteemed panel. So my apologies to all my esteemed colleagues, first of all. I think to answer your question and head into this straight away, Mayank, I think it's absolutely no longer a debate that there has been a very clear segmentation. And in fact, the more that I think of it, I think we were actually having this luxury where premium content, if you had to see, there was only one place, and that was the theater. Because the other option was television, which of course...
The network television, you mean,
network television, which has traditionally in India been advertising funded, and that never really produced, high quality premium content, without trying to sort of judge the content in any other way,
You already have,
Yeah.
but never mind.
So I think we had that luxury, and if you look back at last 10 years, the kind of films that actually even found audiences in box office is, films like Newton had a 20 crore box office. There were many small and medium films that actually did substantial numbers.
Right.
Now that was because there was no other option and you had to go to the theaters. Now with the simple choice being available, I think the consumer is clearly going to excise that choice that he has. And therefore what has happened is that you have to offer a different value to the consumer when it comes to a theatrical experience. Now what we do is, we normally paraphrase that as spectacle, which I think is only one way of doing it. Because the film that was a massive success, other than of course the obvious ones like the KGF or Brahmastra or RRR, there's
Pathan,
also, or
right.
Pathan, there is also Drishyam, which actually is a very important case because it shows that you need not have spectacle as the only route. The classic way of taught storytelling which keeps you hooked and gives you an experience in a way different from a spectacle is also a way to bring the audience to theaters. So, so clearly you have to work harder because people are asking the question that, why do I need to go out there? So an event film has become an even big an event, and drawing people out has become harder. And I think that clearly has pushed innovation. So this splintering of audience in that sense is pushing innovation because we are asking the question, are you sure that this is really going to be something worthwhile in a theater?
Right.
And if not, then should we take a harder look at it and segment it maybe differently and look at it as something which will work on a digital platform? So I think yes, without doubt, this has happened.
And you think that's not a huge change anyway, because there were a certain kind of films that have always been made with a certain kind of budget, with a certain kind of scale, with a certain kind of stars, and that's happening regardless of pandemic or not, or it's just become deeper.
No, I think there is a big change. I'll tell you what that big change is. See, the tent poles were always big,
Right.
but the tent pole or the top has become bigger. So it's a winner takes all. So if a Pathan works, it works massive. But the middle has dwindled. Today, if I have to do an Andhadhun, for example, or if I have to do a Queen, or if I have to do a Mary Com, I don't think it's going to get those numbers in the theater. They are great films.
But you just said Drishyam 2 made the numbers. So,
yeah, absolutely. So there are different routes.
So we don't know yet.
No, but what I'm saying is we don't know whether this middle, which is a good content film, is going to get the audience to the theater in the same numbers.
Right.
I think the difference is that because there is a choice, your numbers have changed significantly.
How
So the middle is dwindling.
Right, because this is a director's panel. Ajit, how was your interaction with the directors been since that change took place, or at least the change that we seem to agree on at this point has taken place, in terms of the subjects they come to you with, in terms of the scripts that you're looking at, in terms of directors you want to work with? How has that changed from a corporate perspective, from the perspective where you are sitting with a paycheck?
Look, much before the paycheck comes out, what should come out is your own conviction. So while corporates are always garlanded with this frame of paycheck and suits and all of that, but the fact is, much like the audience, you are the first audience who has to fall in love and be convinced about what story you're going to go on a journey or not. So that has not changed at all.
Okay.
I think every time you hear a story, whether it was pre-pandemic or now, your human reaction, your instinctive reaction to that is identical. And I don't think that changes. All that changes is the way you segment that story, and I think we are all dealing with the same issue. And I think all the directors also, when they are thinking of, let's say, the scale of the film or a scope of the film, this does, I think, somewhere play a role in how that whole thing is sketched out, and that's very visible in the kind of output you are seeing of late. So I think in that sense, we are all in the same boat because we are tackling the same market, which is undergoing the same splintering that we all agree on, But where nothing changes is, you still have to find that response within you, and you still have to believe that this will be the response when eventually the film, let's say, or the story goes to a larger audience, irrespective of whether it will be in the theater or on the OTT.
Is there a premium on the director or the story? Because so much about treatment, isn't it?
That's a tough one, but I think, to be honest, there is always a premium on the combination, So a certain kind of story with a certain kind of director, and when I say premium, I'm talking first of all about an intellectual premium. It may not translate exactly in terms of the numbers, but when for example, Sriram, the kind of work that he does and the integrity that he has in the domain that he commands, if you say that this is a Sriram Raghavan script and you see that world sketched out there, so you're that much more confident.
What if he comes with a romance? Will you say yes? Because that's not something he's dealt with so far.
No, in fact, my next movie, I can plug it a little bit now.
Go for it.
It's got an huge element of romance. It's called Merry Christmas. It's got Vijay Sethupathi and Katrina Kaif done.
Come on, go for it, man.
Thank you.
And of course, there's another thing that I've been very conscious of, sort of looking at, is because it's a manual, and these are people who work in the movie industry, and as it turns out, there is no woman on this panel. Of course, not for the lack of having tried, some just couldn't make it. Do you think there's been a change on that aspect in terms of the environment, the ecosystem you belong to? Do you see far more participation from women in general, whether on your crew, whether in your set, whether, of course, or head of department and stuff like that? Has that changed a lot? Or is there a barrier to entry? Or was there even a barrier to entry before, Sudhir? Like, was there a barrier of entry that led to the fact that there were fewer and there's much less of that now?
I think there was. There was a lot of condescension. And today, I think women, there's still, there's a lot of condescension. And there's still, it's not easy. Right. But I think they've broken through. And I think very soon, the wonderful change that you'll see in cinema or storytelling will be this, where women tell stories not necessarily about women, but about the world we are, see our world. So I think that will change. But there was a time when some of us had, even women couldn't even be makeup people.
By law.
By law.
Right.
So there was only some girlfriend was a dress designer or some shit, it was really terrible. The film industry in that sense has improved, like, how?
Are there certain departments, though, where you see far greater participation of women? Like, for instance, and that's just an observation.
Now, except for direction,
right,
where there are far fewer, and I don't know why. I don't know why. There is, and DOPs.
Right.
But for example, at one point my partner Renu Saluja would be one of the few editors, and now it's like, So
among editors, it might well be that the women are in a majority. It seems like the number of times you see editor as a woman in the credits. Would that be correct? Is there a correlation here, or just coincidence?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a job which
so you don't say anything sexist right now. Whatever you're going to say.
No, the act of being amongst people and being social and being diplomatic doesn't come easily to women. The schmoozing part of it, and all the other aspects require a lot of that. Who's a film director? That person who can get somebody else to put money on a film. After that, we'll figure out whether it's a good one or a bad one.
Right.
But first he has to get...
Yes, we first convince Ajit.
Yeah, someone.
To start with.
So that aspect, I think women are far more blunter. They get bored with this. I think they learn. They have to.
That brings me to the more fundamental question. A cinematographer does his cinematography, and the editor does the editing, and the actor does his acting. The writer does the writing. The director directs all of them. How do you get that job? I'm going to start with you. Of course, you studied direction, so thereafter. But what's up? How do you get this job? It really doesn't have a real definition in that sense.
Directing, I don't know. There's lots of definitions, and there are 4 more definitions coming up at least. So I think for me, at least the kind of stories I do, I'm more directing the audience, to think this and think that, and subverting their expectations. Otherwise, the main thing is to get a good team, because directors are not really authors. I mean, there is that whole theory, and I believe in that theory too. I love a lot of those auteurs, but it's just a lot of groups working and friends working and teams working. That's how movies are made.
So a lot of them who start out with various departments don't eventually end up becoming directors. A lot of them...
A lot of people at one point decided that there's no need. There was a great writer in the West called Ben Hecht.
Right.
And he decided that you don't need director. Actually, you need a story and you need DOPs. But it didn't work. So, I mean, there's a... What does a director do? I think he rewrites. What does a director do? He rewrites on screen. To take the page and the imagination and something that just fly away, he puts that into a concrete medium, right? So that's written for the cinema. So to write for cinema, I mean, of course, there are many directors who can, and you can get by being a director by being some kind of arranger, right? You can be a floor manager, and you can have the title of a director. You can be a star's friend, right? All that also happens. But a good film, whether in the popular, whether Raju Hirani, let's say, or Sanjay Leela Bansali, or Abhishek Chaubey, or Hansal Mehta, or Raghavan, right? These directors know how to rewrite on cinema, which part of it is also to direct the audience to see what, and also leaves a door open to see the opposite, I think.
Right. And I mean, of course, it's also about control in terms of the story you want to tell. Abhishek, do you think it's essential, therefore, from a commercial aspect of it, in terms of telling your story, for the director to also ideally be a producer? Because that's a leap that you took, which you may have decided on at some point in your life.
You know, there has been this trend in our industry in the last, say, about 10, 15 years, that every director worth his salt has become producer, because and they're producing not in the real sense, because they're not funding it. They're just taking the money from somebody and making the film. It comes simply from this, that I want to put my money where my mouth is, because I want to know how much this film costs and how I can manage these costs in the most efficient manner. I mean, that's the only reason I turned director. I don't have any ambitions of being a big producer or anything of that sort.
You want to produce your stuff?
I want to produce my stuff, because I really want to know how the money is being spent. You know, so that's the reason why we became producer. I don't think, and that's just the nature of our industry. But generally speaking, I don't think it's essential for a director to be a producer.
Is it essential for a director to own his work, to be a writer?
Personally, yes, but generally speaking, no. You know, for me, it is very important to be at least one of the writers. I always write in collaboration, but it's very important for me to be, through the scripting process, you know, page by page, to be directly involved in it. And that's something that I need to do so I can direct well. But generally speaking, just theoretically speaking, I don't think it's...
Hansal, do you think either a producer or a director, producer-director, or a writer-director, just to have greater control over what you want to put out?
I think... you know, as a director, my job is to manage a lot of people, a lot of diverse talent, whether it is the producer, whether it is the cinematographer, whether it is the actors, whether it is my editor, my writers. So it is, you know, getting all these diverse set of people and getting them to work in one particular direction, in service of a particular story. So my major skill lies in that. So in doing that, I become part producer sometimes. You know, I have to put on my thinking cap when I'm talking to the producer, to put myself in his shoes and sort of understand that, you know, if the film is costing so much, why is it costing so much, and what can one do? So, you know, without really having that title with you, I think that understanding of the process is important. Like writing, I'm an integral part of the process, but I don't write because I want to be able to see that writing objectively. I want to interpret it without being overly attached to it.
The worst thing a producer can do is to override the director on these decisions. He has to sit.
You're talking to him?
No, I mean, no, I mean, the worst thing he can do is to, I mean, because, for example, a film like Sairat, he decided to spend 50 lakhs on just the background in a 4 crore. I mean, a low budget film, you can, a 4 crore film, he decides to spend 1 crore on background. Now that's a decision, right? Which otherwise you could say, oh, this percentage of the budget. So I mean, I think producer and director have to work in great collaboration, and a great producer is the most graceful man on this earth, especially in the old days, because he was putting money in your dream. You had this
Hoping to make money also, to be fair.
but you know, I mean, 90% producers didn't make money, and he knew this is probably not going to make money.
Right.
And it's the wild roulette chance. But he was, I mean, a good producer is a really, I mean, he's a curator, he's a person with grace, he's a manager. He brings in much more. He can take all these 5 directors and decide to produce their work. And so if he's a good producer, I think it's a very necessary person in this.
So I'm going to turn to the producer here, and it might well, the good producer here, it might well be that this is that one industry where the boss is also the knocker. In the sense that you could be a producer, the money is yours, you're financing, you're bankrolling it, but your movie star may choose not to show up for 4 days, and you know there's nothing you can do. You're hanging around with this situation, right? Or the director has a certain vision, and you know that's what they want to make, but the money is yours. You're thinking, hey, but maybe people don't want to watch this. But there is this art as expression, there's entertainment as circus, there's this whole conflict that's always existed. What are your thoughts on this, Ajit? And firstly, do you think that most of the directors you meet, because of the way they are as creative people, and there is a whole, which is obviously a myth, but there's a whole right brain, left brain thing. They may not be very good with understanding money, but they're great with ideas. Do you face that a lot in your job as a producer?
Good producer loves cinema, and money is secondary.
Say that.
A lot of questions there.
After, I mean, you want to make money, but what comes first is just that.
So I think the conflict that you're talking about, or the these two roles and how do they interact, and the director wants to make something and you believe the public wants to see something else. I think all of this just does not arise if you are producing out of conviction. You know, for instance, the way we approach is.
Give me some examples. As you as a producer.
So I'm saying, look, any script that has ever come to us, I think the first aspect of that is whether I'm understanding what this guy is trying to do, because he is the creative owner of this vision. So my job, first of all, is whether intuitively, without trying to really convince myself too much, am I able to understand his journey, what journey he wants to go on, and then do I find excitement in me to be on this journey? You know, when Sriram narrated Andhadhun, the script wasn't complete, but it was so powerfully written to the extent that it was written, that the feeling I had in that room was that, look, this is something which is going to be fabulous. So I don't know what is going to happen next and how will we wind up this entire story, but this is absolutely taut. It always keeps ahead of you. And this is something that I intrinsically want to be part of. So at least the way we work at the studios is, if I don't get a film, and I'll give you a contrary example as well, you know, just to be fair to this entire topic and to be sincere to it. So if I have got carried along with the story, then I'm in with the vision. So there is no case of conflict, because this is what he's trying to make. And if I get this, then only I onboard the bus, otherwise I don't.
Right.
So there is another director, I will not name him here, of tremendous repute, so much so that...
You can name, it's just between us.
So much so that there is a...
It doesn't matter.
So he came and he narrated the script to us, and I just didn't get the film at all. And the next
that movie
question...
became a blockbuster, that's what
The next question that I ask is the other people, because I could be the only guy who didn't get it, and my job is twofolds, whether I want to be part of this journey and whether there is going to be a majority response which is in line with whatever I'm feeling. Right. Because if I'm the only guy who loves it, then we'll go to have trouble later. And we had a fair bit of mixed kind of a sense in the room. You know, some people, very few people actually were very excited about it. I was very tempted because, you know, it was a big name and all of that, and personally I had a great regard for him. But to me, the point of contention is, look, I didn't get it. And I am carrying the responsibility of making it or not. Now, if I'm not getting it, I'm not boarding this bus. Okay. I didn't board that bus. The film
Became dangal. Say something, na?
When it eventually came,
What happened?
it was a successful film. I went and saw the film. It was nothing like, because I feel extremely guilty about this. So I went and saw the film. It was nothing like what I heard in the room, you know. And I slept easy, you know.
Right.
So I think to me the only acid test is whether I want to be part of this or not. The second clarity is that I'm not making it. So I offer a lot of creative pushbacks, ideas, suggestions. Me and my team, we are not sitting on the ringside and watching the fun. We will, you know, put in our challenges, our viewpoints, but with the clarity that, look, these are coming from the point of, you know, a sort of advice, a pushback, a question. The person who's in charge of making the film must have the call. That clarity is extremely important.
That you're sure about.
Absolutely. Because he's calling the shots,
So-
and that's why he's there.
So, hypothetical question, if you had the director of Sarat come to you and say, listen, the budget you said was 2 crore. Let's say, I'm just saying, let's say the budget is 2 crore and the song needs to be shot or done, or the BGM needs to be done at 50 lakh. In the way that corporate studios function, I mean, if it was a man who's, you know, mortgaged his house as movies used to be made back in the day in Bombay films. But if, as a corporate studio person, do you have your ass on the line? Because, hey, I can't give you 50 lakh for BGM because if tomorrow, I mean, Sarat did well, but a lot of films don't. So someone's going to question you because you are in a structured system.
So I think the some of my films have really had completely dramatically different outcomes. So it affects you, you know. And I know that it's not common to, you know, have emotion and corporate sit conveniently the same sentence. But I think this business is different, you know. I mean, you get attached, right? Because storytelling is a matter of emotions at the end of the day. And if you're not involved in it, what kind of a storyteller you are, even if you're not a creator, even if you're a curator only, you know, your attachment absolutely has to be there. There's no other way around it.
Interesting. That's a great point. And another perspective altogether. It's something that we don't usually get to hear in a director's panel. Sorry.
There's an aspect to what Ajit said. So
Yeah.
the way I see it, it's a collaborative process. Okay, and there's a difference between pride and ego. What happens is that, you know, often pride you cross the line of pride and it becomes ego. And it shows in your work. You know, there's creative pride is important, that you take pride in what you're doing, in the way you're doing it. But I think you need to, when I was talking about what a director does, it's one of the big things that you get everybody together to work towards that vision. You get everybody to buy into it, to believe
Including
into
the
it.
producer.
Including the producer.
Right.
Including he's not from another planet. He's putting in money. He's putting in money. He's investing in your passion because there is some passion there. You know, otherwise, unless you have guaranteed that I'm making a 500, 600 crore film, then I would rather produce than direct. If somebody is guaranteeing me a Pathan every week, then I will only produce, you know, for money. But nobody does that. You know, everybody knows, you know.
Nobody's in this business for money alone.
For money, I mean, every week films fail. Yet, films are produced over and over again. You know, and I think it comes from a place of passion. Even, you know, I've been working with platforms like Netflix. We've made Scoop together. It's been a collaborative process. You know, there's been no ego. That no, how can the platform tell me how to tell a story? They're not telling me how to tell a story. They are responding to the story that I am trying to tell. And so if you see it as a response rather than as an attack,
Sure. I mean, I
your
think Monica's in the
perspective
audience.
changes.
So she's the good producer.
Yeah,
in this
Monica, I
particular
hope you're listening.
conversation. Or has she left?
I did this for you.
Which
This
brings
dubbing.
me to the final point here, and this is something that gets discussed so often, at least was a couple of years ago, where all these television channel discussions would be about Bollywood, Bollywood yeah, Bollywood boy. You are all Bollywood, and yet in your own ways, you're also not Bollywood. Ultimately, as a way to understand the you know, where you operate, the ecosystem you're part of, do you think there is even a film industry? Do you feel like you're part of a film industry? Or is it, at the end of the day, a series of freelancers hustling to somehow make their next film? I'll start with you, Sriram.
I mean, there is an industry, of course. I mean, because every department, I mean, whether you take DOPs, I mean, all the HODs and all that, we are all, I mean, there are associations and everything is there. It's not just a bunch of
freelancers.
I mean, it's not the beginning. It's not Babylon, beginning of Hollywood. It's not that. So now there's a lot of organized kind of things. So, I mean, yeah, I won't say for everybody, but yeah, when we are making a film, like I have worked with Viacom, and I mean, we had a good sort of interaction, though we had heated arguments, but all that is part of the game. I mean, that I do with my own team also. So it is an industry, and it really, I mean, what else do I say? I mean,
Hansal, take over.
I'm not a producer.
So, no, I think...
The reason I'm asking this question, Hansal, and this is something that, you know, you also sort of interact with this idea quite often. I notice you on social media. But, you know, Bollywood, yeah, Bollywood kaisa hai. But why isn't Bollywood talking? Maybe there is no Bollywood. It's not some government department. It's not some building where everyone operates from, right?
Bollywood does not exist. There's no Bollywood. I think what exists is there is a lot of respect for each other, for each other's work. And there is a desire to share, you know, what you have done with each other. You know, you look at, when you call it an industry, you go to a preview. Say, you know, the preview of Udta Punjab. Every director versus Salt was there to watch the film, to support the film, to watch the film, to watch Sudhir Bhai's film, to watch Affa. Everybody is there. I mean, that for me is an industry that, you know, you are supporting each other's work, you are appreciating that work, learning from it, and you know, using that to propel your work forward. Like, you know, I saw Maqbool when I saw Vishal's film. It was his first film. Like, he had done Makdi before that.
Right.
I saw Maqbool and I called Vishal. I said, Vishal, I wish I had made my first film after I saw this. You know, I would have learned from this and made a better film as my first film. I made it too early. And that's what happens, you know, when you see the work of a colleague, when you see the work that happens around you. Vikram is not there on this panel today, but I mean, I saw Jubilee, I messaged him, I said, you know, how do I even try to become like you? You know, I think that for me, that is the beauty of the industry. It's 30 years and it's just the number of people. The tribe has been growing. When I made my first film, it made it to the Indian Panorama, and I was told that on the jury there's Sudhir Mishra. I had never met him. I knew that he was the man who made Dharavi. So I met him for the first time. He came, hugged me, and said, "Bahut achhi film banai yaar tune." And that was it. I mean, it's now 26 years since that day. And I think that pat on the back, that hug, that is the industry, not the industry that, you know, produces. We don't produce cloth. हम लोग कपड़े के थान नहीं बनाते. You know, we produce, you know, everything comes out of passion, out of emotion. It's an industry based on emotions.
Would you agree, Sudhir?
Yeah, I mean, there's a practical aspect to cinema, right? I mean, there's money. And all of us take money. There is some sense of responsibility to see. I made a film called Afwa. Money-wise, it's Anubhav Sinha's neck on the line. Right, so it's my responsibility. So in this sense, you have to keep to budgets. In that sense, you have to do, but it's a like collaboration, like he says, of minds. And I should have the freedom someday to float away from it. I mean, if for example, it's okay if this industry, and it's happened to me, right, and that, you know, maybe what I'm talking about is not being understood. So, I mean, you have to understand that and float away and meet a Pritish Nandi who meets you on a plane and come back, right? So this whole aspect of it, I mean, the industry, the money aspect of it is necessary, but that's not what cinema is about, you know. And this, I don't like the word Bollywood at all. I've never liked it. It's the Indian film industry. That's why I'm very comfortable with Vetrimaran. And I'm very proud of him, or somebody in the Kerala industry, because we always grew up in the independent cinema movement as the Indian film industry. So I'm in Bengal. So what happened now, people are understanding internationally our cinema. But I think people understood with Ray, no? So one day, I mean, now you have to set up stalls. When Ray was making films, you just had to walk around Cannes and say, hey, Satyajit Ray film, and everybody went to you. Right? So there's never been a person like him, has there? So, I mean, I'm just saying that and is that the industry? I think we are all fanatics and we love this muse called cinema. No? We're kind of slightly upset, deformed madmen who hang around here and like he says, we have hung around here, he and I have hung around despite not being paid, no? For many, I mean, I've often put in my director's salary to complete the post-production. Why? It's kind of lunacy. I mean, because you can't do anything. People who are in cinema can't do anything else. I think that's why they stick around. The medium loves us. It makes us better. It cured me. I'm sane because of it. There's so much that it does for me. So, I mean, can I screw it for money? I mean, no.
I come to you, Abhishek. You're in this amazing position of someone with a completely independent voice that comes through, but you've also always operated in what is called mainstream in terms of the kind of people you work with. And when I say mainstream, it has its own hierarchies, and there's, Alia Bhatt has his own thing, and so, Shahid Kapoor is his own thing, or whatever it may be, right? Do you ever feel like, okay, मैं हूँ Bollywood, or do you feel like, okay, ये है Bollywood, मैं यहाँ काम करता हूँ, and then I get the fuck out of there?
Yeah, I mean, take a leaf from what they were talking about. I mean, we're not an industry in the traditional, conventional meaning of the industry. It's a matter of semantics. But yeah, we're all in it together for the love of the medium, because we love the craft of cinema so much. As far as the mainstream industry is concerned, there is a connection to it. I mean, no matter how, I like to keep a low profile. But that doesn't mean I'm not connected to the industry. I mean, the biggest example was when Urta was, it was going through all sorts of problems with the censor board, and there was a press conference organized, and literally the entire industry turned up. All of the people here turned up, and most people I didn't even know. And that was the day I really figured out that, okay, this is how it works. So we are standing up for each other. We are here in one voice talking about a film by this guy who we don't even know really well. So that I mean, in that sense, it was a brotherhood, a fraternity, whatever you might call it. So yeah, we are not in industry in traditional sense, but we pretty much are. My nature is, stick to being the part of the industry where it really matters.
Okay.
So I'm not going to wear a suit and go to parties. I won't be able to do that. But what happens...
Is that by choice or that's a personality?
That's just who I am.
Okay.
So that's not where I want to be a part of fraternity, the glamour of it is of no use to me.
And there are enough directors who do that, and do you think that really helps them? Because it's, after all, show business, and it's great to be like Alia Bhatt's best friend, or it doesn't matter, or it's never mattered to you personally in your work.
It's an occupational hazard for me.
Okay.
Because this is a show business, and this is high profile.
It is, right?
Yeah, you got to be in the news to to stay in the business. I don't believe in that. I have never been interested in it, but I don't think it's important, because I mean there's so many. I'm not some sort of an exception. There are many people like me. Because I love the medium of movies. I just thrive on it. It's the only sensible thing I do in my life. So that's what I'm here for. And I'll be part of the industry where it really matters.
Well, I have to say this has been a very, very tough session to moderate, because we could spend an hour and a half with each one of you individually. I'm already booking you in advance for when that happens. But our time's up. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. And give it up for the finest filmmakers in Bombay and India.